All right, let's talk about these rumors. Pokemon Winds and Waves is being rumored to have over 300 brand new Pokemon in Gen 10. Over 300 brand new Pokemon. I want to talk about this today. Forgive my absence. I've been on vacation. I'm back now. I'm excited to talk about these things. A lot is going on. There's a lot of conversations happening. And I want to throw my hat into the ring. 300 brand new Pokemon, right? That's the rumor. And I think what I'd like to address today is that this really is not that ridiculous. Or maybe, I guess 300 brand new Pokemon is ridiculous. That is actually crazy. Even if it's true, it is ridiculous. But I think I can explain this. I think it's kind of obvious. I think it's right in front of us. I think not a lot of people are talking about this. I think I have a solution. Okay. So the latest rumor is that there is, going to be the Pokedex for Winds and Waves is going to be 531 Pokemon, or like the Pokedex will be 531 Pokemon large. I don't know how to say that exactly. And apparently 307 is the number of new placeholders based on, and this is not coming from the Terra League. This is coming from a source that is, definitely not final because we're a year and away from Pokemon Winds and Waves. This game presumably won't come out until the end of 2027. But presumably this information would be coming from a much more recent source. And so while this number is likely to change, this is not some distant concept. But 307 is the number that we're looking at. And I guess how much backstory should I give? Maybe I should just jump right into it. I have been thinking about, for the last couple years, since Scarlet and Violet truly, of this idea, right? I've been thinking about regional forms. I've been thinking about things like the Blood Moon Ursaluna, Titan Pokemon. I've been thinking about convergent evolutions, Generation 9. Pokemon, Game Freak, has been obsessed with introducing these slight variations. Even, and I should have pulled this up, even, hold on, let me pull up, even like just the Generation 9 Pokemon, just like the plain decks, all of like, there was like 141 new Pokemon introduced in Generation 9, something like that, like new Pokemon in forms, things like Squawkabilly, right? Things like the Mousehold forms, things like, you could kind of even look at Palmy in that line with those evolutions being very very gradual. Lechonk got two different separate evolutions. I feel like Toedscruel is kind of part of this conversation. Like I said, Finizen having two different forms. Man, there's Tatsugiri having multiple different forms. Like, forms are not new to the Pokemon series, but forms are something that Generation 9 specifically was really playing with. And I have always kind of looked at this like, even Paradox Pokemon, right? These are supposed to be like our Ultra Beast. These are supposed to be like our, right? It's a new category of legendary Pokemon that's tied into the story. And those even were variations of existing Pokemon. And I think I've just had a lot of questions about this, like what this means, if this is a tease for Generation 10. And I'm starting to think, yeah, it actually is. I believe that the way Game Freak could fill out a Pokedex of 300 Pokemon, right, would be through these specific variants, right? Species-specific variants. In the anime, I'll say, going back to Generation 1, there have been many instances of Pokemon receiving micro forms, right? All the way back in Generation 1, Arbok is what comes to mind. Every single generation, every single time Arbok appeared, the pattern on its chest would be different. And this is kind of cool. People joked 10 years ago that like this was the first regional form. Like like you can see it right here. The face on Arbok changes between the different Pokemon, right? This one's a little bit more sinister with a red mouth. This one doesn't have teeth. This one doesn't even have a mouth, really. It's just like a pattern, and the eyes are more obvious. This one, in Generation 2, there was like an open mouth. It changes, right? And we don't see this with any other Pokemon to this degree. Like, obviously, generation to generation, especially Gens 1, probably up to Gens 3 and 4, like, the Pokemon were maybe, like, adapted or retconned, I'll say. But Arbok, it was literally every single game, not even generation, but every single game that it appeared in, even in Ranger, etc., right, in the manga, it would have it. I mean, I don't even know what this is from, but it says right here, Arbok has an invulnerability pattern, it has an attack pattern, it has a speed pattern, and this is really cool. It looks like in the anime, Professor Oak's Pokemon lecture, Arbok has like a smile, like this one has a smiling face. I've actually never seen that before. And so this is an example of a species specific variant, akin to a regional form, but it's not dependent on a regional form. And when regional forms were introduced, I think a lot of people, like, that just felt so natural. A regional form is so great and cool. It feels so perfect at home in the Pokemon world because it is literal evolution, right? It is like, it is an application in the Pokemon world of what real life evolution and natural selection truly is when a Pokemon evolves depending on its environment, right? But there's limits to what a regional form can be, because a regional form, like, when that made sense, right? It's like, oh, it's a brand new, we're in Alola, we're in Galar, these Pokemon will look different. That's fun, that's great, I love that. In Hisui, in Legends Arceus, that idea started to bend a little bit, right? Because it's like these Pokemon have looked different in Hisui, but isn't Hisui Sinnoh? And haven't some of these Pokemon been able to exist in Sinnoh before? Not in this form. So how does that? So there's like a time element, right? There's a time aspect to that. And then in the Blueberry Academy, we started seeing regional forms pop up, and this might have even happened before, but specifically in the Blueberry Academy, we started seeing Alolan forms pop up, right, in these biomes because they made sense with these environments. So it's, kind of blurring the lines of what a regional form really is. And I feel like I'm maybe getting into the weeds a little bit, but so this is an idea, the species-specific forms. This is an idea that has existed since Generation 1, and I'll give you some more examples from the anime, which oftentimes these ideas from the anime get retconned and turned into real things or used as the inspiration for new things that are added to the series. We've got the pink Pokemon. There was a whole episode about Pinken Island and the Orange Islands, right? Which, I mean, come on. I don't even need to say it. Gen 10 is supposed to be an island hopping adventure. This is going to be the Orange Islands, the game, right? Because of the food that was on this island, all of these Pokemon look pink. They turn pink, right? You also had Valencian Pokemon, right? This is actually kind of the origins of like regional forms, except it was specific to an island, not to an entire region. So on Valencia Island, Pokemon like Butterfree, Raticate, Nidoran, Vileplume, Paris, Weeping Bell would have slight variations. They'd have different patterns. They'd have different colors. They kind of looked like shinies, to be quite honest. And okay, so if this is going to come full circle, right? The leak, the rumor is that we're going to have 300 brand new Pokemon, right? In Generation 10. That would be, like, just to give you a sense of scale, that would be the original 151 plus the Generation 2 100 new Pokemon. So we're at 251. And then about, let's say, less than half of the 130 or something Pokemon that were introduced in Generation, 49 of the 130 or something Pokemon that were introduced in Generation 3. That's a big Pokedex of brand new Pokemon, but I don't think we're going to be seeing brand new Pokemon. I think we're going to be seeing a Pokedex of maybe 100, but then we're going to have these micro regional forms. I think that is what we're going to be taking a look. I think that's what we're going to be seeing. Because this is a theme that has existed since Generation 1, this idea of not regional forms, but forms that appear on specific islands. And, oh, this is coming together perfectly. I'm remembering now that Gen 10, again, some of this might not be 100% real, but from the Terra Leak, Generation 10 seems to, right, one of the themes is infinity. It seems like they're working on ways to use, I think the term was generative AI or generative, I don't remember, but some sort of technology to generate. What was it called? I'm totally forgetting. It's basically what you'll see in a lot of video games. I think about Minecraft, where it's like as you travel in the world in real time, the world generates based on a set of, based on an algorithm, based on like a set of rules of what can happen in that space, right? On what's allowed. And so what I'm imagining, and this ties in also with the seed Pokemon, which I think we could talk about in a second, because that might be something different. But the idea there, and what I'm thinking about, is that all of the Pokemon, let's say there's 250 Pokemon, all of those Pokemon could have potentially, and this totally works almost as like a secondary shiny form. All of those Pokemon could also have another form. Or maybe let's say there's 200 Pokemon. And then I don't know how it's all going to break out. I don't think every Pokemon's going to have a new form, but I could see there being, if there's 100 new Pokemon, I could see all of them having a couple different forms. Maybe one of them has one form. Maybe one of them has 6 forms. And depending on which island you go to, they will actually have, you'll be able to find slight variations, like this Arbok, right? Arbok is actually a Pokemon. Snakes live in Indonesia. There's a lot of snakes in that part of the world. I guarantee Arbok could get a form like this. We could actually see this kind of like resurrected. We could see this like type of this micro. I don't know what you would even call it because they're not regional forms, but they're variations. And okay, I'm all over the place. What I was gonna say is that we've seen this in Generation 1, right? We've seen these variations in Generation 1. Even with, this is different, but like clone Pokemon. But the idea that Pokemon resemble animals in the real world, right? The idea that Pokemon, just like animals, every single Pokemon is an individual, right? It's not the static monster, but it is an individual. This was a theme in Generation 1, and when the canon was a lot looser, and when they played with different ideas, and when they could mess around, right, and experiment. We saw this all the time and time again. I've shown you a bunch of examples of Generation 1 Pokemon, and there's more. I'm focusing on like the natural ones because I think that's what we would see in Generation 9 and 10, Generation 10. But this idea of every Pokemon being its own creature, right? I think we're going to see that adapted into Generation 10, and that's how we're going to be able to fill out this entire Pokedex, I think. And what I was going to say is Generation 9, yes, there's a lot of different examples of different forms of Pokemon that are naturally occurring, right? The Squawkabilly is, you could say that's just Squawkabilly maybe doesn't even count because Squawkabilly is more like just a color variant. But that is an example of kind of what we're looking at here, right? But I think a better example in Generation 9 is actually a lot more similar to Shellos, where it has a south, an east and west form, right? I should have pulled this up. Shellos, this is not even the point I was going to make, but Shellos in Generation 4 has a West Sea and an East Sea form, and I think that's what we're going to be I think that's what we're going to be seeing in this game. I think Pokemon are going to get new forms depending on the island that they show up on, or some islands will have specific quote-unquote regional forms, depending on what characteristics are on that island. That's super fun, right? Maybe there's a specific pressure that makes that specific Pokemon on that specific island a little bit different. That's super fun. I think a lot of people have also been talking about the Wallace line. That's like, I feel like been going all over the place. Everyone's talking about that now as if we all knew about it, right? But that is something that has been brought to my attention, and I think it's pretty cool. This idea, it's like this evolutionary theory in the world, or in that could show up in this new Gen 10 region that is inspired by this imaginary line. that is in the real world, in Indonesia and Southeast Asia, that describes a separation. It's this imaginary line that indicates where there is a separation of creatures, creatures super unique to one side of that line do not exist on the other side of the line, because there's another type of Pokemon that there's another type of animal. I'm in the Pokemon world. There's another type of animal, right? That only, basically what I'm saying is that Pokemon, right, will adapt depending on which side of that line they grow up on, like this Shellos, right? But also it could be specific to an island. And also, what I was actually going to say is we see these different forms, right? We see these different forms in Generation 1. In Generation 4, this is continued with Shellos, where these Pokemon are not just a color swap, but these Pokemon actually, they do truly look different, right? And it's based on where you capture them. This is, I think, the blueprint of what we're going to see. And even in Pokopia, there's a hint. There's a tease at a yellow Shellos. It's like, what is that? What is that yellow Shellos? Is that going to be the South Sea, the North Sea? And then Generation 9 introduces a Paldean Tauros. It's the combat breed. But there's 2 more breeds that are not just color swaps. They have new types. They're elemental types. They have new sub-names. These are Paldean Tauros. But this is the Blaze breed, the Aqua breed. Their horns are different. Their tails are configured different. These are different Pokemon. And I think I would be so happy to see new Pokemon introduced in Generation 10, and then to have slight variations on those Pokemon. I think that's so special. I think that is really, really cool, and pushes us in a direction. I think it would push the franchise in a direction for, I don't know, I guess individuality. It's like, I don't know. I feel like over the last couple of years on my podcast, and I'm going to be talking more about this on Hidden Power for sure. But I feel like I've been talking about, like, how can we get new shiny forms, right? Is that possible? And it's not even about it being shiny or rare, but it's about the idea of, like, having more variation in the Pokemon. I think after 30 years, right, we're entering this new era of Pokemon on the Switch 2. Capable hardware. I feel like Gen 10 is poised to be the first actual competent console Pokemon game. I don't, maybe I'm being a little hyperbolic, but, like, I don't need to pretend like the Pokemon games have been, like, super competent. They are fun, but I'm excited to see what we're going to be, getting in Generation 10. And I think a device that Game Freak could, kind of apply in this game, other than, like, I don't know, battle mechanics and other things, something that actually would make the world feel lived in and dynamic, is if every single Pokemon that you find, right, feels unique to you. You find a Pokemon, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of an example, but let's say yeah, like, I don't know, let's say, you know what, I'm trying to think of it. I don't know, you catch a Pikachu, right? Everyone's got a Pikachu. It's a Pikachu, right? But what if you found that Pikachu on a specific island, and now it has, like, a star-shaped tail, and it has a fire type. It's electric fire type. That's, I don't know. I don't know if I'm quite selling the idea, but this is something that we see time and time again. As I'm describing that, I'm now thinking about Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, right, which are games that take place in the Hoenn region. Again, this is an island hopping adventure to some extent. And those remakes are really cool. One of the features that they add is the Dex Nav, and you can do this right away in the beginning, where you can find Pokemon through the Dex Nav. And what that does is it gives you a chance to find a Pokemon with egg moves, with moves that it wouldn't normally learn in the wild. Basically, fundamentally changing and making every single Pokemon that you capture, right, a little bit different than your buddies, a little bit different than an NPC, a little bit different than the last time you played the game. right? Because that specific Poochyena that you got with Fire Fang you didn't catch that in the previous game. You didn't catch that in the original playthrough of Emerald. Your rival doesn't have that, right? You can catch a Ralts with a special move in the beginning that it wouldn't normally get, right? I think Pokemon has an opportunity to take that concept, this concept of, right, different breeds that are specific to a small patch of the area, right? The Valencia Pokemon, the Pinkin Pokemon, right? These specific variants of Arbok that are not regional forms, but just a little bit different. Here's another example of a Vulpix, right? A newborn Vulpix would have one single white-colored tail, right? But it's a Vulpix. You know what I'm saying? Like Pokemon... And again, these have been things that have been kind of... Shelders, and holy cow, Shelder's another really good example of this. We have a Shelder, and for some reason, when it... That's so weird. When Shelder bites onto a Slowpoke, it takes onto a completely new form. It looks like a completely new Pokemon, but it's not a Shelder. Could we see, you know, a new variant of a Shelder that, like, eats Slowpoke tails or something similar to that, and so they look a little bit more like the tail on a Shelder, on a Slowpoke. I think Executor is another example. I don't know. I feel like you could just... I don't know. I look at these Pokemon, and the thing that I'm always craving is, like, individuality. I didn't even talk about the Blood Moon Ursaluna. That's another great example. It's a Pokemon. It's one of a kind. Every Pokemon in Pokopia, all of those new forms that we have are one of a kind, right? Those are different than what I'm talking about, but not quite. Actually, you know what? Honestly, look at these Magikarps. This is from a random game that's, I don't think, canon, but this is actually a really good application, or a really good demonstration of kind of what I'm talking about, right? These Magikarp, depending on where you catch it, they have these different patterns. And then a way to take that a step further is to maybe give them a new type, maybe give them a new ability, maybe extend their crown, maybe extend their tail, right? Change them a little bit more. I don't know. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. Man, even these different colored Kecleons. I think Spinda is like the furthest example of this. Pokemon, the beauty of Pokemon, the thing I love about Pokemon is that it's a living, breathing world, right? And so I want to see these creatures, right? I want to see my ideal version of the Pokemon world, right? Of Generation 10 is to see Pokemon take another step in that direction, right? Remember the pink Butterfree? This is what I'm talking about. Remember the pink Butterfree? Imagine if you could get a Pokemon that's just a little bit different, and it's not a shiny, but it's just like another variant of it. The Crystal Onyx. Is that something we could be seeing? Let me know in the comments. I'm super pumped by these leaks. I think there's some really cool ideas here. But basically breed forms. Like that's kind of what I'm thinking. Variants. These are sub-variants. They're not regional forms. They are specific environmental forms. I don't know what they're going to call them. And then I guess the last thing I want to lead off on is that, like, I haven't given up the dream yet, right? That Gen 10, right, seems to be inspired by Southeast Asia. There's a lot of countries in there. And then when we talk about if the Wallace line is implemented into this Gen 10 game, I could see low-key there being canonically 2 regions that make up the map of Gen 10. 3 regions that make up the map of Gen 10. Indonesia, right? Borneo. It's like there's so many Thailand. There are so many regions in Southeast Asia. And so essentially, maybe they are all considered in the Pokemon world as like, we're all the same. This is our region. But I could also see there being a situation where it's like the major islands are actually separate governments, separate regions. And that has continued that there are even other smaller islands in the world in this map that have their own unique forms. I didn't even talk about the seed Pokemon. Maybe I'll make another video about that. I don't know. I guess the other little idea is And shout out to Munching Orange. I was just watching his recap video on this, and he had a really cool idea, which I was thinking about the seed Pokemon in relation to this, right? The rumored seed Pokemon is this idea that, like, you will get a Pokemon that will evolve infinitely. I should have brought this up earlier. But I think that idea, I think I did talk about it a little bit earlier. That idea could be applied to some general Pokemon. But also he was saying, like, oh, what if the first, if it's open world, what if the first gym or trial that you do is fire type? The seed Pokemon evolves to be fire type. And then the second gym or trial that you fight and defeat is water type. Now you have a fire and water type. So, and then he did the math in his video, and I thought this was really cool. He did some quick math, and apparently there are like 150, 160, 70 type combinations. So the seed Pokemon, if it has quote unquote infinite evolutions, we could have 150 new Pokemon / regional forms, etc. And that's a normal amount. And then the seed Pokemon is another 150 different forms, which is not as exciting as what I'm saying. But I think, here's the thing. Here's the kicker. What I'm saying, I think someone could make the argument that what I'm saying has no application because the 300, apparently in the code, there are 307 new placeholders. And what that would mean is variants would not be considered in this. And so you could say that. And then I would say, well, great. Then there's even more Pokemon because like we could get 150 new evolutions and stuff of the seed Pokemon. We could get 150 new Pokemon and forms. And then there could be a bunch of other variants in here regardless. And so now all of a sudden we're talking about 600-700 new Pokemon and forms plus the other 250. And now we're technically, you got 800 Pokemon that you could capture, different unique Pokemon that you could capture, times 2 because of shiny Pokemon in Generation 10. This is, I don't know. I want to explore. I want to discover. I don't know. Maybe it's just because of where we are right now, but if this game was coming out tomorrow, I would want to go in, honestly. I'm starting to think I might want to go in blind. To be quite honest with you, I might want to go in blind. I've been leaked on enough games. I'm really excited about this. I'll make another video talking about the Pokemon evolutions and forms, etc. that have been leaked. But I just thought this was too cool. I hope everyone's been well. I hope everyone's been doing well. I haven't been posting as much on this channel. I think I've just been enjoying the summertime. It's been really special. I've been spending some time with my wife and my family and getting a lot of beach time in. But I hope you're doing well. I hope you're having a good day. Hope you're having a good week, a good summer. I hope you're in a good place. I appreciate you. I'll talk to you soon. Subscribe.